Everyone keeps saying Africa is growing, Africa is booming. There's all these big high hopes and stuff. But if we take a step back and look deeper and ask the right question, Africa is growing for who? Because that growth doesn't really reach everyone. So, for example, we see new roads, we see new building, we see new mines, all these things that are happening. But not everyone gets to benefit that. It's only the big guys, the big dogs, the elites, the gold mafias, all these people, they are the ones that are actually benefiting because the ones that are in the rural areas, they're not benefiting anything. If we go into big cities like Cape Town, Johannesburg, or Harare, and we compare those cities to the rural areas, there's a massive difference. All those new roads that are being built, they're not benefiting anyone. And they're actually benefiting these big investor companies that are coming to Africa to offer help in all these things. And they're building those roads to move those minerals from the ground to the ports and everywhere else, where yet everyone else in the villages, they're suffering. And for example, the Chinese mines in Zimbabwe. So when these Chinese, they go there, they find lithium or whatever, like a gold area or a mining area. The people that are suffering is the villagers that live around those areas, because there's been incidents where villagers, they had to be moved from their homes and to move somewhere else where they don't even know where they're going, because the Chinese or these big other people that are coming from different countries, or even the government, they're chasing those people away so that they can extract those minerals. When I talk about growth, I don't mean new buildings, new highways, new high-end areas. I'm talking about the real growth where human beings are actually benefiting, people of all nations, people, whether they're in the city, whether they're in the villages. That's real growth, improving the way of life, giving them clean water, access to medication, and all these other things. Not these new roads, big buildings, and that. Those really don't benefit the individual. They don't really benefit the everyday people that are in the rural areas that don't have access to medication, education, and all these things. That's the growth that I want. That's the growth that I'm talking about. And when all these companies are coming in to invest, and they're actually doing it for themselves, not for our people. So I encourage everyone that we need to ask these questions to our government and everyone that's in leadership to be able to have better negotiation. Because let's say if we look at China or Russia, when they come into Africa to do their deals, and to be honest, I don't blame them. I don't blame the Chinese or the Russian. I blame our own people, because when you look at Africa, we don't have good negotiators when it comes to making deals. So Chinese, they'll come with their best negotiators, even not even their best, maybe some ordinary negotiators that come to Africa and say, okay, we will offer you this, we'll offer you rice in exchange for gold, for lithium, and all these things. And our leaders or our negotiators, they'll be like, yes, we won. But in reality, no, we didn't win. And all these minerals that are leaving Africa, we sell them to these countries for peanuts. And then once they're processed or once they're manufactured or whatever, we buy them at 10 times the price. Those things, they need to stop. We need better negotiators in Africa so that they can grow Africa and grow people, the individual, and improve the way of life, improve how people access medication, clean water, and all those kind of things. And also, if we look at things, expanding cities, let's say you go to Nigeria or Kigali, they're expanding these cities where the rich get to live. And if you look at the difference between the rich and the poor in Africa, the rich are filthy rich, whereas the poor are really, really, really poor. And they're not even getting anything. They're living on less than $50 a day, it sucks. But then that big gap there is insane. There is no middle class in Africa. The middle class are poor and the rich are super, super rich. So those things are also things that are affecting Africa. There's too much greed. People are just not caring about other people but themselves. When we look at these big malls that are being built in Africa, the Mall of Africa, the Mall of whatever in Africa, And those things are visible growth that we see, that everyone is seeing, and everyone is, wow, we're doing so well as a country or as a continent. But then in reality, those malls, that who are they actually built for? Because they're built for these big brands that people are going there with their last dollar to spend all their money they have just to impress other people. And it just doesn't really work. And also, when we look into this thing of GDP in Africa, it doesn't mean nothing in Africa. These African countries, when they talk about their GDP, they just showing the world how when this country is saying, oh, okay, our GDP is 400 billion or whatever, that's just nothing. It's just a way of how other countries can look at you, or the level of respect they can measure you with. The GDP in Africa, we need to scrap that and just start focusing on ourselves, because these GDP things, they're just not doing anything from us. We look at the GDP, okay, this country is booming with their GDP, but then the people are actually suffering. There's just nothing. We've got all these minerals. We say, oh, Africa, we've got minerals. Our GDP is booming because our minerals are so, and this. But in reality, those minerals in Africa, we don't have the means to extract those minerals. We don't have the means to process those minerals. We just get the minerals, get them out at a cheaper dollar, and we just get nothing in return. There's big companies in Africa. We look at Dangote. Those guys, obviously, they're making millions. It's big. It's a $1 billion company. But then you look at the people in Nigeria, they're struggling. Obviously, that's his company. It's benefiting him, not his people. And he's going to start supplying all his oil to African countries. And obviously, that's good for Africa. But then the people, the individual people, they're not really benefiting anything. Africa, we keep saying we're building, we're growing, but in reality, we're just going backwards. You look at countries, Denmark, it's got a population of really low population, and their GDP is over $500 billion. And you look at countries in Africa, our population are crazy, but then our GDP is 400. That's the highest one, over 100, just over 400 billion. That's the highest GDP. And that country, you compare that GDP to a country in Europe, it's nothing. It's a poor country. And we're just building backwards every single time. Our leaders are just not focused on anything but themselves. There's too much greed. There's just no care for ordinary citizens. So those things, we need to change them. And this thing of being afraid of our leaders, we need to change that. We need to have a voice, especially the younger people. There's no point of us going to school, doing this education, getting degrees, PhDs, and when the opportunity comes, we run away to countries like UK, whatever, Europe or America, because that's where the opportunities is. In Africa, we need to have opportunities, but those opportunities are not there because our government just don't have the necessary means or care to supply those people in need. They just care about themselves. You look at countries, Zimbabwe, I mean, that's my country, so I'm not going to really say too much because I don't want to get in trouble. But look at our country in Zimbabwe. I know I've got friends that have done PhD, they've done degrees, and they're very educated people. But then when I talk to them on some other days, like, there's just no jobs, there's nothing. Some people, I'll talk to them that, oh yeah, I'm getting $150 a year. No, not a year, sorry, getting $150 a month. And what is that? What you gonna do with it? You got transport, you got food, some got kids. So these things, they need to change. And some African countries are actually, our currency is useless. I remember a few years ago, I was traveling to a country in North America somewhere. I was traveling to a country in North Africa. I'm not going to mention the country. And before I went on that trip, I went online because I wanted to know how much you actually need to go, how much cash you need to have to go through the airport. And when I was doing some research, and I seen someone wrote, oh, there's no point checking because that money, that currency is not even on the stock exchange. So you can't go to Tesco or Money, whatever, to do a money exchange because that money doesn't even, it's not even on the stock exchange. So what is the point of our currencies then? Because our currencies is so weak compared to the dollar, the pound, or the euro. We need to find measures to improve our currencies. We improve our currencies, we improve our way of life, we improve our GDP, I guess, that everyone seems to care about. Africa is not growing at all. There might be some parts that are growing, but when you look at it, when you put it on the surface level and you look at every single thing, you see that Africa is going backwards. We've been free from colonization for a long time, But then when you look at it, we're actually not free because our mind are still colonized, our leaders are still colonized, they're still bending to some European American leaders instead of focusing on their own people. Now let's look at all these foreign influence or these foreign investment that are coming to Africa. They know that Africa, there is money to be made, and they will invest their businesses in certain part of Africa because they know they will get money, whereas workers, they get peanuts. Most of the people that are working in these big firms that are European, American, that are in Africa, they're actually getting peanuts. And also when you look at some of these big firms that are going to countries like Botswana, i.e. for diamond, why does a country from America or Britain have a mining company in Africa and they're actually getting more money than the Africans? I was saying before that we need better negotiators that will be, okay, no, you coming to us, you need these things, these are our terms, and these are your terms. We're not accepting your terms, and we need to up the price of these minerals instead of selling them for peanuts. And when we look into this money thing that's going all around Africa, who's actually benefiting this money? Where is the money going? Because the money is not going to the people. All this money that we're getting from these deals we're signing for minerals or whatever, the money doesn't even reach the people. The money stays in politics, stays with the big boys, the government, the leaders, the presidents, and all these people that don't really care about Africa. So when a country is coming to Africa, say, okay, we're going to invest in your country for so, we're going to put down 500 million US dollar, whatever, that money doesn't even reach the people in the villages. I.e., for example, there's been times where American countries will go to, American companies will go to Africa and be, okay, we're going to invest so much for medication and all these kind of things in return for gold or so and so. Obviously, I don't blame them. They're doing what's best for them. But then when they give our leaders all that money stays at the top. It doesn't even reach people at the bottom. I know some people that live in the cities, not capitals. Even the capital cities or second biggest city, whatever, in a country in Africa, and they don't even have clean water. What's the point of living in a city if you don't have access to clean water or electricity? Some people are actually drilling boreholes in their backyard just to have water. And you're living in a city. What happened to our countries? Our countries are going downhill because of the leaders that we're selecting. We are not, when you look at the people in Africa, we are not strong enough. We are weak. Our minds are just colonized. We are just not thinking forward. We're always thinking, oh, our leaders are going to do this. No, our leaders are not going to do anything. We need to step up and do some of these things ourselves. I know I grew up in the rural areas. So there was no electricity, basically we're just using fire. So now when I look back or when I talk to some of the people, I know there's a lot of people here in the UK that comes from the villages and they're building themselves their own houses, massive houses. They're putting their solar panels, they're having generators, so they're generating their own electricity instead of waiting for the government. But this thing shouldn't really be happening. If we say Africa is growing, Africa is rich, we should be able, as the government should be able to provide electricity all across the country. Another thing is all that I think Africa we need to invest in. We need to invest in nuclear energy. I'm not talking about nuclear bomb or whatever. We need to start producing electricity, start producing energy with all these nuclear. Look at Mali, Niger. There's uranium over there, and that uranium has been going to France. Why can't we just use that to create our own energy? But the issue is we don't have the means to process all those things. So we send it to France. France processes, they do everything. They sell it back to us at 5 times the price of what we sold them. If that's the case, and then why don't we up the price of the uranium or all these minerals before it goes to these countries? And then as Africa, we can grow, we can produce our own energy, and we can have all this nuclear energy to provide electricity to everyone else. Forget all these big dams, hydro dams and everything. We've got all these resources that we keep talking about, but we don't own them. We have them in Africa, but we don't actually own anything at all. Look at Botswana with their diamonds. They don't really own 100% of the diamonds. Look at lithium in Zimbabwe. Do we actually own all of it? Look at gold in South Africa. all these things, and look at what's happening in Congo. Sometimes all this going backwards, it's not always just Africa, it's also the external forces. Look at what's happening in Congo. How many militia groups are there just for minerals? And some of these militias, they're actually funded by the European countries, they're funded by the Americans, all to just stabilize the country, to get everyone confused. And when everyone is confused, there is no way to move forward, there is no growth. But these things, we need to work together. We need to work hard and stabilize our own countries so that we can move forward as a continent. And when you look at some of these things, when I look at it, I always hear when people are talking about Europe, they name countries individually, i.e. Germany, Italy, France, UK, whatnot. But when it comes to Africa, it's always Africa as a whole, as if Africa is just a country. Africa is a continent. There's 54 countries there, or 55, depending on who you ask. There's 54 countries in Africa. And when you look at it from the outside, it seems it's just a one big country that's united. No, we're not even united. We don't even each other. But we need to work step by step as a continent or as countries to be united. And if you look at within the countries, the southern countries, there is no unity there. We're always fighting. South Africans versus Zimbabweans versus Nigerians up there. When will it stop? Some of these things, they need to stop, because we are not actually going to grow. We're just going to keep going backwards every single time. And when I was saying that, I know a lot of friends that they're way too smart. They've got degrees, they've got PhDs, and the opportunities are not there. These graduates are actually struggling to find jobs. Some of my friends, I graduated about 5 years ago. There is no job. When I mean no job, I mean not just the jobs that they graduated for, but no jobs at all. Here in the UK, you can graduate with whatever degree, but then you end up doing a better job than what you graduated for. Whereas in Africa, that's not really the case. In Africa, if you want to succeed, you have to do something illegal after you finish your education. I'm not saying everyone should do illegal, but if it works, it works. Some people, they end up going into these illegal mining just to make money to support their families, all because our government is just not supporting the youth and empowering the youth, especially when it comes to jobs, and even empowering youth to have their own things. People are struggling. People are suffering. They can't even do anything. They can't even find jobs. They can't even eat. They end up being drunk on the street, because you might as well get drunk than just been looking for a job every single day. All right, now let's just talk about the truth for once, right? When we talk about Africa, because all this growth and that we keep talking about, it doesn't mean inclusion. It doesn't include anyone or everyone. It just includes the top dogs, includes the gold mafias, it includes the taxi mafias, all these big dog boys. And it needs to change. When we talk about growth, it needs to involve every single person, because there's not gonna be growth if we don't include every single person. Because most of the people in our African countries, maybe one country, 95% of people, they're struggling, they're poor, and the 5% are filthy rich. Africa as a continent, or these African countries, they don't really invest in their own people. When someone in Africa makes it, they've got money, and they don't even invest in Africa themselves. They end up going to Europe or America just to invest, or China or somewhere in Asia just to invest. Africa, we've had so many opportunities to invest in our own people. Look at countries like the Gulf countries, Dubai, UAE, Qatar, and all those countries, that they're a desert. But what they've done in the last 30 years is something that Africa, we won't be able to do in the next 200 years. Africa, we're so far behind, and we try so hard to compete with the West, whereas we know that the West is way too far ahead. Why don't we just do our own thing, take our own pace, take our own directions, and in that way, we'll be able to succeed, we'll be able to invest in our own people. Because there's so much investment in Africa, as people, there's small businesses that are happening, but these small businesses are being taken over by the big corporation companies from Europe, Asia. And so you find out that someone in Africa, West Africa, they've got their own product, natural hair products, and then a few years later, because people are not supporting that brand, a brand from, or a big corporation from the West will come in and buy that brand, and now their products are becoming less and less more natural because our people couldn't even buy those products, and now those products are sold cheaper in Europe and everywhere else, but they're no longer natural. In Africa, there's so much talent, there's so many skills that we can actually invest in and grow in, but unfortunately there is no way forward, especially with our leaders. You can't even put a young person in power in Africa because as soon as they get there, someone will be there in their ears. They'll always try to take the piece of the price. And in Africa, like, as in Africa, we always, when we're looking for opportunities or we're looking for a fish, we climb up the tree and looking for a fish. Come on, man. Those things need to change. We need to change our mindset and be able to focus on certain things, focus on growth, focus on building our own people. Look at other countries, man. They're doing so wonderful. They were also destroyed. Some of these companies that were destroyed, I mean, countries that were destroyed. You look at Japan, you look at some countries in Asia, their economy is booming. In Africa, we no longer the producers. We're not even producing anything in Africa, but we're just the consumers. We need to stop being consumers and start having our own products and start producing things for the West or Asia, but we're not doing any of that. So those things that we need to work on, those things as African people, or even African people that have been in the diaspora. We've learned so many skills, we've learned so many things with businesses, with so many things that we can take back to Africa. But the real issue is we can't take those things, those skills back to Africa because we know that our leaders, unfortunately, are not really going to accept those skills. They're only going to use what's benefiting them, not the people. So my question to you, and the question that I want you to ask yourself is, are we actually growing in reality, or it's just all glamour and all the looks and that, and deep down there's no growth? I want each and every one of you that are watching this episode that look into Africa and see that are we actually growing, or we just confusing all these new buildings that are being built by China, or all these roads, railway lines that are being built by different countries outside Africa that are building in Africa. Are they actually growing Africa, or they're growing themselves?